the president of the United States, is going to be banned from Twitter for 2 more years. Facebook suspends Trump until 2023 and shifts the rules for world leaders. Boy, I wonder what's coming up in 2024 that made them change their minds. Am I right? Come on. Are they going to reinstate all the anti-war pages that they deleted too? I bet they won't. Yes, the suspension will last 2 years from the date of the initial block and would only be lifted if the risk to public safety has receded, Facebook said on Friday. I think censorship is a bigger threat to public safety than anything Donald Trump is going to say on Facebook. That's where I come from. That's where this loony lefty comes from. I know it's crazy to think that censorship is a bad idea no matter where. And by the way, people say, well, Jimmy, Facebook's a private company. Okay, so here's what you say to people who say that. You say, I am against censorship no matter where it comes from, right? I'm against censorship. I am for freedom of speech and liberal speech and freedom of speech and anti-censorship, the sentiment that came out of the Enlightenment. We're against censorship, whether it comes from the state, whether it comes from the church, or whether it comes from a corporation. That's what you tell those people. And by the way, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube should no longer be private companies. They should be public utilities, just like the telephone is. Because just like 30 years ago, you couldn't start a business without a telephone, you can't do a business without social media. And you can't be a prominent person in America without a telephone or without social media. So those should be now considered public utilities. That's another thing you tell people who say stupid shit like censorship is good. This is what I used to tell the Young Turks over and over. They don't hear me because Cenk Uygur is a right-wing, union-busting warmonger, and he hires women that believe that too. The suspension will last 2 years. Okay. This new timeline denies Republican Trump a major social media megaphone ahead of the November 2022 congressional elections. However, so they're shifting the political debate and they're admitting it. So Facebook is admitting that they're controlling the political narrative in the debate.
Indeed.
They're admitting that this is, you can't get your message out without them. They're admitting that. However, it means he may be able to return to Facebook well before the next presidential election in 2024. Trump has been permanently banned by Twitter and remains suspended by Alphabet's Google, YouTube. So YouTube is owned by Google. Google is owned by Alphabet. Okay. And Trump has remained permanently banned on those. Does that make you feel comfortable that the leader of a major political party isn't allowed on what should be a public utility? They're trying to squelch it. That should scare you. Facebook's oversight board. It says Facebook's oversight board. Are you ready for this? An independent group funded by the company. That's not an independent group. That's not an independent group. That's a group that works for Facebook. Funded by Facebook, and they're an independent group that gets all their money from Jeff Zuckerberg or Mark Zuckerberg. How is that independent? This is amazing. They're an independent group funded by the company who rule on a small slice of controversial content decisions. In May, it upheld the company's unprecedented block of President Trump.
Random people get to just this. Random people just get to make the decision that the president of the United States can be censored.
Nameless, faceless people. Trump said, next time I'm in the White House, there will be no more dinners at his request with Mark Zuckerberg and his wife. It will be all business. It's really a big club, folks, isn't it? See, they've been having dinner together at the White House. They had dinner together. Just friendly dinner. They're just hanging out. Couple of billionaires hanging out at the White House, talking about how to censor people, how to control the flow of information, to control a culture and a political process. White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki, speaking to reporters, said of Facebook's decision on Trump that it felt pretty unlikely that the zebra is going to change his stripes over the next 2 years. We'll see. So these are just people casually talking about taking people's freedom of speech away. Well, we'll see. It's freedom of speech is a privilege in America, apparently, not a right. You have to be on good behavior, and then you get freedom of speech. And then the First Amendment applies to you. Isn't this... if this doesn't scare the shit out of you, that this is just so casually... This is how it is. This is the world. We're living in a world of censorship. And it's being pushed on by quote-unquote liberal journalists. Certainly the Young Turks, when I was there, they're a great example of the people who push for this kind of censorship. They push for all censorship. Wow. Wow. In a major reversal, Facebook said it was removing the presumption we announced in 2019 that speech from politicians is inherently of public interest. Now it's not anymore. So if the former president has something to say, it's so important that we have to ban it. It's so, but not important enough to share it with you. So that's a bullshit statement. So that inherently that statement is contradictory. So it's so important that we have to ban it, but not important enough to share it with you. Why don't you let people decide if what Trump is tweeting is worthwhile or not? You don't trust American people? No. No, they need a daddy to keep certain people's ideas away from them. And that daddy is, well, we all know it's the Atlantic Council, which is the military-industrial complex in Wall Street. That's who's doing this, by the way. So when you see Mark Zuckerberg, when you see them, or you see Jack at Twitter, when you see them banning someone, they're doing that at the behest of the military-industrial complex in Wall Street and nobody else. Mm-hmm. Okay, just so you know. The company said it now would weigh violative content from politicians against the potential risk of harm in the same way it does for all users. It will also use a newsworthiness exemption. So they're just saying we're going to do whatever we want, whenever we want. We're going to ban some people sometimes, and other people we're not. We're not going to ban the people we like, and we're not going to ban the people caught lying at the behest of the establishment. Those people are okay. That's what this says. So, hey, when Dr. Fauci gets caught lying, you're going to take down his Facebook page? No, because that's newsworthiness. We got to keep him up. That's what this means. However, a Facebook spokesman confirmed politicians' posts will remain exempt from third-party fact-checking. Well, what do you think what you're doing is? Your Facebook is the third-party fact-checker. You're the person in between the person posting something and the person reading something. You're that third party. And by the way, they're not going to do this. They're not going to fact check politicians' posts. You know why? Because they'd have to ban every politician on Facebook. That's why. Guess who's not for this? Bernie Sanders is not for this. What? You mean the farthest lefty guy in the Senate? He must be a Putin puppet. Is he working for Russia? That's what Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks would say. I wonder what they're saying. I bet that's what they're saying. I don't feel comfortable about it, says Bernie Sanders. In other countries, they understand how giving big tech too much power is a bad thing, but not in America. Here's what Bernie Sanders said. He said, this is a bad news guy, meaning Donald Trump is a bad news guy. But if you're asking me, do I feel particularly comfortable that the then president of the United States could not express his views on Twitter? I don't feel comfortable about that. And Bernie's right, because Bernie's old enough to remember when lefties were the ones being the target of censorship. They still are. Believe me, if you're a real lefty, they're trying to censor you. Just like they tried to censor us when we told the truth about the Iowa vote count in the primary. We told you the truth about that the DNC was messing with that, and that turned out to be true. There was an investigation, turned out what we reported was true. Facebook said that was fake news. They flagged our report. Turned out it was true. They never went back and apologized. They never went back and took away their flag. So believe me, it's the unpopular speech is the speech that's going to be banned from Twitter and Facebook. What is the point of the First Amendment? To protect unpopular speech. Popular speech doesn't need protection. Germany and France oppose Trump's Twitter exile. Isn't that weird? Germany and France, because other countries get it. You shouldn't let unidentified Silicon Valley oligarchs decide who gets to have free speech in the United States. Germany and France oppose Trump's Twitter exile. Chancellor Merkel calls Trump's ban on Twitter problematic. France's Brun says private actors shouldn't have such power. I agree. How do you pronounce that? Brun? Brun. On Friday, the Nigerian government said it had indefinitely suspended Twitter's activities. So the state turned it around on Twitter. The state is banning Twitter in Nigeria. 2 days after the company removed a post from Nigeria's president that threatened to punish regional secessionists. So Facebook starts censoring the president of Nigeria.
Twitter.
Twitter starts censoring the president of Nigeria. And then the president of Nigeria says, oh, guess what? Twitter, you're no longer allowed in Nigeria. Now, that's two wrongs don't make a right. Right? So I'm not for them banning Twitter. Here's Twitter. We are deeply concerned by the blocking of Twitter in Nigeria.
Oh,
really?
wow.
Then maybe stop censoring people on your platform, especially the president of Nigeria.
What a joke.
We are deeply concerned by the blocking of Twitter in Nigeria. Access to the free and open internet is an essential human right in modern society.
Is it?
Well, if it is, then you would stop banning people. If it's a right, because if it's a right, you got to go to court to take that person's right away. But you're not treating it like a right. You're treating it like a privilege. We will work to restore access for all those in Nigeria who rely on Twitter to communicate and connect with. So they're making our point. So they're making the anti-censorship point that using an open and free internet, meaning Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, is an essential human right in modern society, which means this private company defense is bullshit. They're undermining their own private company defense. That's what that does. They're saying it's not a privilege. It's a right. That's Twitter saying that, not Jimmy Dore, not President Assad. So Cenk Uygur gets this straight. It's Twitter saying that. Pro-censorship Young Turks, just so you know, Twitter is saying it's a right. Now, feel free to ignore it. Glenn Greenwald tweeted out, this entire democratic world seems to have no trouble seeing how menacing it is for democracy to have our political discourse policed by Silicon Valley monopolists while pressured by political parties. Only the U.S. liberals and their journalists can't see it. They're pro-censorship. The rest of the world is against Twitter censoring and Facebook censoring. The only people who are for it are the shit libs in the United States. People like the Young Turks, The Intercept, MSNBC, Jake Tapper, CNN. Those are the people who are for censorship. You want to be like Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks? You want to have the rock legends call you out for being status quo imperialists? Because that's what you are. The rest of the world knows this is a bad idea. Germany, France, Nigeria. But in the United States, we're such fucking lemmings. We don't deserve liberty and freedom in the United States because more than half the country is screaming for censorship. And that's what makes you a shit lib. If you want to know what is a shit lib, someone who's for censorship, someone who doesn't understand this. Bernie Sanders understands it. Germany understands it. France understands it. I understand it. Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.